Before you scroll away, listen carefully, because this message is not a coincidence. If these words have appeared in front of your eyes right now, it is because heaven allowed it. God wants you to hear this at this exact moment. Something you thought was gone forever, something you cried over, prayed about, and tried to forget, is about to return to your life in a way you never expected. Not the same, but better, stronger, and more blessed than before. There are moments in life when it feels like everything you valued suddenly disappears. Sometimes you lose opportunities, sometimes you lose relationships, sometimes you lose peace, confidence, or even the hope that tomorrow can be better. You prayed, you asked God why it happened, and there were nights when the silence felt heavier than the pain itself. You wondered if God had forgotten you, if your prayers were being heard, or if the chapter you lost was gone forever. But today God wants you to understand something very important. Nothing that is meant for you can be permanently taken away. What God has written for your life cannot be erased by circumstances, by people, or by time. Even when something leaves your life, it does not mean the story is over. Sometimes God allows you to lose something only so He can return it in a form that is greater, healthier, stronger, and more aligned with your destiny. There was a reason that door closed. There was a reason that situation ended. At the time it felt like loss, but heaven was working behind the scenes in ways you could not see. While you were feeling broken, God was rebuilding. While you were feeling empty, God was preparing something new. The truth is that many blessings cannot enter your life until certain things leave it. Sometimes the thing you lost was not the final blessing but only the beginning of a bigger miracle. And God says that the season of waiting is about to shift. The pain that once made you question everything is about to turn into a testimony that will remind you how powerful God's timing really is. You may have lost money, but financial stability will return stronger than before. You may have lost a relationship, but God will bring someone into your life who treats your heart with the respect and love you always deserved. You may have lost an opportunity, but a door is being prepared that is far bigger than the one that closed. The enemy wanted you to believe that your loss was permanent, but God says it was only temporary. What you thought was the end was actually a transition into something better. God sees every tear you cried when no one else was around. He heard every prayer whispered in the middle of the night when your heart felt heavy. Even the prayers you stopped saying because you thought nothing was changing. Heaven still heard them. God never ignores the pain of His people. Sometimes the answer takes time because the blessing needs preparation. Just like a seed buried in the ground looks like it has disappeared, but beneath the soil something powerful is growing. The things you lost were not destroyed, they were being transformed. Think about the seasons in nature. Trees lose their leaves during certain times of the year. From the outside it looks like the tree is dying, but in reality it is simply preparing for a new season of growth. When spring arrives, the tree becomes fuller and stronger than before. In the same way, the losses you experienced were not signs that your life was falling apart. They were signs that a new season was quietly approaching. God is saying that restoration is coming. But this restoration will not simply bring back the old version of what you lost. It will come back better, wiser, stronger, healthier. When God restores something, He does it in a way that leaves no doubt that His hand was involved. People will look at your life and realize that what happened cannot be explained by luck or coincidence. It will be clear that God stepped in and changed the story. There were people who doubted you when things went wrong. Some even believed that your loss was proof that you would never recover. They assumed that what left your life was gone forever. But they did not understand that God's plans are not controlled by human opinions. What God decides to restore cannot be blocked by anyone. When the right moment arrives, everything can change faster than you ever imagined. God also wants you to know that during the time of loss you are learning important lessons that will prepare you for the blessing that is returning. Loss teaches wisdom. It teaches patience. It teaches you to recognize what truly matters. When something returns after being lost, you value it in a deeper way. You protect it, respect it, and appreciate it more than before. That is why the new version of your blessing will be stronger than the previous one. The pain you experienced was not wasted. Every moment of struggle was shaping your character. Every difficult day was strengthening your faith. God was preparing you so that when the blessing arrives, you will have the strength to keep it and the wisdom to use it correctly. Sometimes the greatest blessings require preparation, and the waiting season is where that preparation happens. Right now, God is asking you to keep your heart open. Do not close yourself off because of what happened in the past. Do not assume that every new opportunity will end the same way as the old one. Your future is not limited by your past losses. God is writing a new chapter, and this chapter will contain victories that you once thought were impossible. There will be a moment when you suddenly realize that the thing you thought was gone forever has returned in an unexpected way. It may come through a new opportunity, a new connection, or a surprising turn of events. When it happens, you will remember this message and understand that God was guiding every step even when you could not see it. Faith is believing that God is working even when nothing seems to be happening. Faith is trusting that the silence between prayers and answers is not empty but full of preparation. The story of your life is still being written, and the chapter of restoration is closer than you think. God says the time of loss is ending. The time of restoration is beginning. What you lost will not define your life. Instead, the way God brings it back better will become the testimony that encourages others who are still going through their own difficult seasons. So lift your head. Strengthen your faith. Stop believing that your best days are behind you. The God who created the universe is more than capable of restoring the things that were taken from you. When He returns what you lost, it will come back multiplied with peace, wisdom, and blessing. One day you will look back at this painful chapter and realize that it was not the destruction of your life but the preparation of your greatest comeback. The loss was temporary, but the restoration will be lasting. God is not finished with your story, and the next chapter will prove that sometimes losing something is the very thing that leads you to receive something far greater. And God says to you right now, be ready. Because what you thought was gone is on its way back. And when it returns, it will be better than you ever imagined. Before you continue listening, take a moment and think about the things that once meant everything to you but somehow slipped away from your life. Maybe it was a dream you worked so hard for, maybe it was a relationship that once filled your heart with joy, maybe it was peace, confidence, or even a sense of direction. There were moments when you looked back and wondered what you did wrong, why things fell apart, and why something so important had to disappear from your life. But God wants you to understand something powerful right now. What left your life was not the final chapter of your story. Sometimes things are removed not to punish you but to prepare you for something that carries a greater purpose. There are seasons in life when God allows certain losses because the version of you that is coming in the future needs something better than what you had before. At the time you may not have understood it. You may have felt abandoned, confused, and even angry. But heaven was not ignoring you. Heaven was preparing something that your current situation could not yet see. God sees the full picture while we only see the present moment. What feels like an ending to us is often the beginning of a better path that God has already designed. God says that the pain you experienced when you lost that thing was not unnoticed. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment when you asked God why this had to happen was heard. Nothing you went through was meaningless. Even in silence, God was shaping your future. Even in the moments when you felt like nothing was changing, heaven was moving pieces into place that would eventually bring restoration. Sometimes when something leaves your life, it creates a space that feels empty and uncomfortable. That emptiness can make you believe that you have lost something permanently. But that empty space is often where God begins building something new. Just like a field must be cleared before a new harvest can grow, certain things must leave our lives so something stronger can take root. The loss you experienced created the space for a greater blessing to enter. God is saying that the return of what you lost will not be a simple repetition of the past. It will be an upgrade. It will come back stronger, wiser, and more aligned with the person you have become through your struggles. The version that returns will carry lessons, protection, and stability that did not exist before. When God restores something, He does not just give it back in the same condition. He transforms it so that it fits perfectly with your destiny. There were times when you thought the opportunity was gone forever. Maybe you believed that the door had closed permanently. But God is able to reopen doors that seemed locked forever. Sometimes the same blessing returns through a completely different path. Sometimes it appears in a new form that you did not expect. What matters is that God never forgets what He promised for your life. The enemy wanted you to believe that the loss defined you. The enemy wanted you to believe that you would never recover from what happened. But God says that the setback you experienced was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to strengthen you. Every challenge you faced built a deeper level of resilience inside you. The struggles you went through made you wiser, more patient, and more aware of what truly matters. God also wants you to know that the waiting period had an important purpose. During that time you were learning things that could not be learned any other way. You are learning how to trust God even when the situation looked hopeless. You are learning how to keep moving forward even when the future looked uncertain. These lessons were not wasted. They are now part of the strength that will help you handle the blessing when it returns. There will soon be a moment when everything begins to make sense. The confusion you once felt will be replaced with understanding. You will look back and realize that if certain things had not been removed from your life, you would not be ready for what God is about to bring. Sometimes the greatest protection comes in the form of a loss that we do not immediately understand. God is reminding you that restoration is part of His nature. Throughout life there are countless moments where what was broken was healed, what was lost was found, and what seemed impossible suddenly became real. The same power that restored others is working in your life right now. Even if you cannot see it yet, the process has already begun. What you lost may return through an opportunity you never expected. It may return through a connection that appears at the perfect time. It may return through a sudden change in circumstances that opens a door you thought would never open again. God works in ways that often surprise us. The blessing does not always arrive through the path we imagined, but when it comes, we recognize that it carries God's signature. You must also remember that your story is still unfolding. One chapter that contained loss does not define the entire book of your life. God is still writing new chapters filled with growth, restoration, and victory. The difficult season you experienced was only one part of the journey. Ahead of you are moments that will remind you why faith matters and why patience is powerful. God says the time is coming when you will see clear evidence that what you lost was never truly beyond His reach. What seemed impossible will begin to shift. The situation that once caused pain will become a testimony that encourages others. People will look at your life and realize that something greater than coincidence brought restoration. Do not allow past disappointment to stop you from believing again. Do not let the memory of loss convince you that blessings cannot return. God specializes in turning broken situations into powerful testimonies. What was once a source of pain can become the very thing that reveals God's power in your life. The most important thing you can do right now is keep your faith alive. Continue believing that God has not forgotten your prayers. Continue trusting that the story is not over. Even when progress feels slow, even when nothing seems to be changing, remember that God often works in silence before revealing a powerful breakthrough. Very soon you will begin to see signs that the season is shifting. Small changes will start appearing. Opportunities will begin opening. The heaviness that once filled your heart will slowly be replaced with hope. These signs will remind you that the restoration God promised is not just a distant idea but a reality that is moving closer every day. And when the moment finally arrives, when the thing you thought was lost comes back into your life in a better form, you will realize that God was guiding your path the entire time. The delay was not denial. The loss was not permanent. It was simply a step in the process of bringing you towards something far greater than you imagined. So remain patient, remain hopeful, and remain faithful. Because the God who allowed you to lose something is the same God who is preparing to bring it back in a way that will exceed your expectations. The story is not finished yet, and the restoration that is coming will remind you that sometimes what we lose is only being prepared for a greater return. As you continue listening to this message, God wants to remind you that the story of your life did not stop at the moment you experienced loss. That moment may have felt like the end of everything. It may have felt like a door closing with no chance of reopening. But God says that what you saw as the end was only a pause in the process of something greater being prepared for your life. The truth is that sometimes when something leaves your life, it is not disappearing forever. It is being repositioned by God so that when it returns, it aligns perfectly with the purpose He has planned for you. There were times when you questioned your own worth because of what happened. You wondered if you were not good enough, if you made too many mistakes, or if you somehow ruined the opportunity that once existed. But God wants you to release that burden from your heart. The loss you experienced was not proof of your failure. It was part of a bigger process that your human understanding could not fully see at the time. God never measures your value based on a moment of loss. Your worth has always been greater than the circumstances you faced. Sometimes God allows a separation so that both you and the blessing can grow. Just like two paths that temporarily move in different directions before eventually meeting again at the right place and time, certain things must develop before they can truly belong in your life. The version of you today is not the same as the version of you when that loss first happened. You have grown. You have learned. You have become stronger and wiser through experiences that once seemed unbearable. God is saying that this growth was necessary. If the blessing had returned too early, it might not have survived the challenges that come with it. But now you are becoming ready for something stronger. The person you are becoming is capable of holding the blessing in a way that protects it, values it, and uses it wisely. Think about how a sculptor works on a masterpiece. At first the stone looks rough and incomplete. The sculptor carefully removes pieces that do not belong until the final form begins to appear. In the same way, God sometimes removes things from our lives so that the true shape of our destiny can be revealed. What felt like loss was actually part of the shaping process. God also wants you to know that restoration does not always look the way we expect. Sometimes we imagine that what we lost must return in exactly the same form. But God often works in ways that are even better than what we imagined. The blessing that returns may come through a different opportunity, a different path, or a completely new situation that carries the same purpose but with greater stability and peace. There will come a moment when you realize that God was protecting you during the time of separation. What you thought was rejection was sometimes divine protection. What you thought was failure was sometimes redirection. God was guiding you away from situations that were not strong enough to support your future. By allowing the loss, He was making room for something that would last longer and bring greater joy. The season you are entering now is different from the one you left behind. This is a season of rebuilding, of restoration, and of unexpected blessings appearing when you least expect them. You may begin to notice small changes around you. Opportunities may start appearing that were not there before. Conversations may open doors that once seemed permanently closed. These are signs that the shift has already begun. God is preparing a moment that will remind you how powerful His timing truly is. When the blessing returns, it will not arrive quietly. It will arrive with clarity. You will know that it was not coincidence but divine timing. The same thing you once prayed for will appear again, but this time it will carry a sense of peace that confirms it is meant to stay. People who once doubted your future may begin to notice the change in your life. Those who believed you're lost to find your story will see that God had a different plan all along. Your restoration will not only bless you but also inspire others who are struggling with their own seasons of loss. God says that the waiting season is almost over. The lessons have been learned, the preparation has been happening quietly, and the moment of return is drawing closer. You may not know the exact day or hour, but heaven already knows the perfect moment when everything will align. Until that moment arrives, God asks you to keep trusting Him. Do not allow doubt to replace your faith. Do not allow fear to convince you that the future will repeat the pain of the past. The past was a chapter, but it is not the final chapter. Your story continues, and the pages ahead contain blessings that you cannot yet see. The most beautiful part of God's restoration is that it often arrives when people least expect it. Just when you begin focusing on moving forward and trusting God with your life, the blessing appears again. And when it does, you will understand why the journey had to unfold the way it did. God is telling you to prepare your heart for good news. Something that once slipped away from your life is being guided back toward you. But this time it will come with greater strength, deeper meaning, and stronger foundations. The new version will not carry the same weaknesses that caused the loss before. One day you will look back and realize that even the painful moments were part of a beautiful plan that you could not understand at the time. What once made you cry will eventually become the testimony that reminds you how faithful God has been throughout your life. So do not lose hope. Do not give up on the belief that better days are coming. The God who watched over you during your lowest moments is the same God who is preparing to restore what you thought was gone forever. And God says this clearly to you now: what you lost was never beyond His reach. At the right time, in the right way, and with the right purpose, it will return to your life better than before. The story is still unfolding, and the next chapter will reveal that God's plans were always greater than the loss you once feared.